Hello and welcome to Inside Cottonwood. I'm your host, Doug Bartosh. I'm also your city manager. And we're here today with James Bramble, who's a senior
resident engineer
for ADOT, the Arizona Department of Transportation. And we're going to talk about Highway 260 because obviously you've probably noticed there's a little bit of construction going on out there. And so we want to talk about what the progress is. But before we get into that, let's talk a little bit about the history, because this is a project I know was being discussed when I first arrived up here in 2005. And it seemed like we got real close to getting it done. And then there were just some disagreements about access and just all kinds of stuff. And so it ended up dying. And thankfully, a couple of folks in the Verde Valley, I think Camp Verde in particular, really took the lead to try and get this back on the agenda for ADOT. And there was really a concerted effort between all the communities recognizing that it really didn't work out to our benefit when it failed the first time, because it was and is a dangerous road. And we really need to widen it and separate both north and south travel. And so with that, James, any other history that you want to throw in there that maybe you're aware of?
Realistically, it's always been a priority for ADOT too to get this road done. So we were just as disappointed as the rest of the community when it stopped. But we've always been behind the scenes at the district level working to get this back in and try to get the best product for the entire Verde Valley that'll function well for years to come.
And I know back then we did make a little bit of progress in that we went, I think, from Western to Thousand Trails, and we were able to get the highway divided there. So that actually helped. I mean, it gave us an idea of how much better the roadway could be if we went 4 lanes, divided highway all the way down.
Oh, so, absolutely. It's a good example of it. And,
yeah.
We get a lot of people asking, well, why can't we make it like 89A between here and Sedona? And, it's just a different time now with the technology we have in the roundabout situations that we can provide better access without having those high-speed potential locations for conflict and accidents.
Well, and I gotta imagine on Highway 260, you were dealing with a lot more private property owners than you would have dealt with between Cottonwood and Sedona.
It's possible. I'm not familiar with that.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of state trust land, probably almost half the way to Sedona, and then Sedona has quite a bit of the land north of there and some forest land, but certainly I think you've got a lot more private property owners that are interested in access and making it as commercially viable as possible, because obviously that's eventually what's going to happen on 260 is commercial development most likely, and so getting in and out of it is kind of an important piece of it.
Absolutely, and where we did locate the roundabouts is all for the most part at locations where you can access private property as opposed to forest land or anything else. So it does really open up that development potential along that whole corridor, and I think you're going to probably see a lot of big things out there after it's finished.
Well, and you mentioned it, roundabouts. We might as well cover those
Sure.
too, because I saw a couple of articles, letters to the editors in the local papers about, oh, what are you doing? It's making it more dangerous, and it's gonna slow traffic down, and this is terrible, and why do you do it? And so talk a little bit about why roundabouts.
Again, we're kind of doing a balancing act between the full controlled access, grade separated traffic interchange like you'd have on a freeway, and having that access where the local communities don't have to ask their developers to pony up that expense to develop a frontage road system or a whole lot of infrastructure to get access to the highway while still maintaining that free flow corridor where if you don't have to, stop, you don't have to if you don't want to.
I mean, it certainly slows people down, but that's probably not a bad thing on a roadway like that.
It does, partially, but so does getting stuck behind a motorhome doing 30 miles an hour when you don't have that extra lane to be able to pass them.
Right.
So I think once it's operational, everybody's going to see the real value in that. The other thing with the roundabouts is these are some of the largest ones that we've built. With such a large radius, they really aren't like the ones on State Route 179 where they are such slow speed going through them. These ones have what we call a looser exit, where once you slow down, you enter the roundabout, you can exit and you're back at highway speed in no time at all.
Yeah, and I know Alvin explained that to us as well, that these are even different than what we have on 89A between Cottonwood and Clarkdale. They're
Correct.
Much more efficient getting traffic in and out of them.
And you'll see shortly out there with some of the progress we have how large these actually are. And with the design of that, we've actually made them larger to the outside diameter so that if a large commercial or residential development comes in and needs to upgrade the roundabout and add maybe a dual left turn lane going through them, that area is there to the inside of the roundabout to be able to add that and still have a completely functioning roundabout to add that capacity.
Now, and obviously, if you don't have roundabouts, I mean, you still, again, the idea was to reach some kind of a compromise on this that provided some thoroughfare to get between I-17 and Cottonwood, Clarkdale, and back, but people wanted access off the roadway too. So my assumption is the alternative would have been signals.
That is the typical alternative, yes. And there's a place for them, and it's not necessarily on a road where you want to get from point A to point B without stopping.
Yeah.
So the roundabouts I think are going to function very well here.
Well, and I guess a couple of examples of that is one, I mean, we know they're safer. Right. I think the typical signal has about 32 points of potential conflict. Correct. Where the roundabout has 8. I mean, right there, that tells you it's got to be much safer. And
they're much lower speed when you do have any sort of an accident.
Right.
People are going 25 or 30 as opposed to 60 and T-bone somebody from the side.
Right.
So the severity is much less at a roundabout.
Which a good chance of fatalities or very serious injury are pretty high. It seems the other thing is if you're stopping, certainly that takes up a lot more time if you're stopping for a red light as opposed to just slowing down and easing through the roundabout.
Correct. We can run the math on a typical signal time. If you've got a 120-second signal cycle and you put 7+ intersections out there, there's 7 minutes of your commute when you might slow down for a roundabout for 15 seconds and you're back on your way.
Yeah. So. Well, and I mean, I'm certainly a believer in roundabouts, and I think for us the best example was, as you'd mentioned earlier, was Willard and Mingus Avenue. And we heard all the same criticisms. Right. Oh, it's going to be unsafe. It's not going to move traffic as well, and so on and so forth. And it's worked perfect.
It works great.
Haven't had any accidents there. No kids run over. I mean, it really has worked.
And you can see that same example on the other side of I-17 in Camp Verde now with the one that was just completed at Industrial.
Right.
You've got Taco Bell moving now a block down to have that corner property, and I really think you're probably going to see similar stuff on 260 where that real estate on the corner just got a whole lot more valuable.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I'm a believer. I think it really does work, and it's much safer, and really that's what it's all about. Let's go ahead and take our first break, and then we'll come back and find out a little bit about the progress of Highway 260. Come back and join us.
There are people who struggle with addiction and homelessness. Sometimes it may feel like there is nothing we can do to help.
But there is. You can make a tax-deductible donation and help those in need transition away from homelessness.
When you give someone a handout, you could actually be supporting an addiction.
A better life starts with better health, especially for those living in the streets.
Support solutions, not addictions. You can make a difference. Visit cottonwoodcares.com.
This is Bruce Morrow, Transportation Manager for Cottonwood Area Transit. Remember, we cover the entire Verde Valley and Sedona. Cottonwood Area Transit has you covered wherever you want to ride in the Verde Valley, all day, every day. Take Cottonwood Area Transit through Clarkdale, Verde Village, and from 26 locations in Cottonwood. With Verde Links, it's a quick and easy trip to Sedona every day. Don't forget our connectors to Camp Verde. Visit cottonwoodaz.gov for Cottonwood Area Transit and take a seat. Let's go ride!
Welcome back to Inside Cottonwood. I'm your host, Doug Bartosh, and I'm here with James Bramble, who's with ADOT, and we're talking about Highway 260. So, you know, I mean, we put roadways in the city, and I think people always kind of get the perspective that, you know, how hard can it be? You go grade it, you know, lay down the asphalt, put in the curbs and sidewalk, and you're done.
Sure.
But obviously there's a lot more planning that goes into it, and a lot of people don't realize how much goes underground associated with a new roadway as well. Not only in terms of all the dry utilities, but wet utilities, and even drainage is a big part. So talk a little bit about the planning process that goes into a roadway like this.
Well, again, we had done a lot of that up front with the previous design years back, that we did salvage a lot of that alignment and some of the previous work to identify the right-of-way needs. So we did a lot of soils investigation on this one as well, because we have some really bad clays on the project limits that we really don't want under a roadway. So we did a lot more geotechnical investigation than we do on other projects where the soil's pretty similar throughout the project. So we do have, and you can see it off the highway out there right now, quite a big waste pile that we're gonna leave there and make look natural of soil we couldn't use.
Yeah.
So identifying that was a big part of this. Getting utilities out of the way was also, you know, a process, because the utilities don't necessarily, they don't need to get out of the way until we really need them to. And since projects do get canceled or moved, you know, they wait until they have to.
Right.
So that was a portion of it, getting the utilities moved. And then you do see now out there a lot of the stuff that goes in the ground before you see the roadway, which is some of the larger structures, box culverts, pipes, right, storm drain. That goes in and you don't ever really see again.
Yeah, because
unless it's not working.
There are some big washes down there. So.
There are. We had a really fun monsoon season where we, you know, with the runoff that comes off the mountainside there, yeah, it didn't even have to rain on the project site, and we had water come through and set us back a little bit on some of the progress building those drainage structures. So hopefully that's behind us now for a little while, and we can get some more work done out there and get out of the washes. I think we only have a few box culverts left to build, and then right, we're moving forward. So.
And I know they're showing some pictures of the progress now, and it does look like it's moving along pretty well. So are they on schedule?
We are on schedule. We're about a third of the way through the project, and that, you know, the schedule reflects that, as well as what the project budget that's been spent is right in that ballpark. So we're looking at getting this first phase done, where really we build the new half of the highway so we can put traffic over there, then fix up the other half on the other side. So we are on schedule to be able to, you know, move traffic around to be able to get that done, utilizing the crossovers like we have out there now, and looking at getting done about a year from now.
Wow, that would be pretty quick.
So yeah, And that takes into account some seasons, some of that the rubberized surface course, the final layer of asphalt. It gets too hot here in the summer to be able to place that in the summer, so we may have a little downtime next summer where we can't do that work until September or October when it cools down a little bit.
So do you guys put the rubberized asphalt on just about every roadway now?
Pretty much, yeah, unless it's concrete, and even then sometimes we put it on top of the concrete.
Yeah, because I've definitely seen that in the valley where some of the freeways, they were pretty loud, and they come in with that rubberized asphalt, and it makes such a difference.
And that's the same stuff we use statewide.
Yeah.
It's got ground up tires in it.
I'll tell you, it makes a big difference.
Yeah.
So any major challenges that you guys have run into on this project?
Realistically, it's not a very complex project. The big challenges have probably been the weather and traffic. There's just a lot of cars on that road, and not all of them slow down for a construction zone, so it makes it a little scary being out there sometimes. And
so that's something we want to communicate to the public is, please slow down in these construction areas. They've got workers out there, and there's a lot to see and a lot of people not paying attention. So, please make sure that you watch the road, not the construction. And
right.
That's why we have this program. You got to tune into this program. We'll give you the update on the construction. And when you're on 260, just drive. Just get through there safely and go through there slowly. So I know that's something you wanted to talk about, and it is an important piece of it.
Yeah, we're moving traffic and changing things out there pretty regularly, and it's just something we got to watch for. We do our best to try to let everybody know in advance with message boards, and we do have an email distribution list. Anybody can get on that, and we can add you to that. Anything that changes out there for major traffic switches, you'd get an alert.
So has there been actual occasions where the road has been closed for a certain period of time?
We are required by the contract to keep at least one lane of traffic open at all times to alternate the direction, and that's only at night. Okay. So during the daytime, we should not be closing the road.
Okay.
There was one instance where Corey Drive, we had to get a water line across it, and we had to wait. After coordinating with the local businesses, we waited till Saturday night to get it done when nobody was working, and we could completely close Corey Drive just overnight and get a new water line put in there.
Yeah, and I imagine when you're out there in the middle of the night too, the traffic is less, but the potential for higher speeds probably plays in as well.
Yeah, we haven't seen anything too bad at night with that. It's, it gets pretty quiet out there at night, luckily, but boy, in the daytime, it's a busy, busy road. You can tell why it needs to be widened.
Let's go ahead and take our next break, and then we'll come back and finish up on 260 and maybe talk a little bit about some of the other projects that are going on in the area. So come back and join us.
This is Bruce Morrow, Transportation Manager for Cottonwood Area Transit. Remember, we cover the entire Verde Valley and Sedona. Cottonwood Area Transit has you covered wherever you want to ride in the Verde Valley, all day, every day. Take Cottonwood Area Transit through Clarkdale, Verde Village, and from 26 locations in Cottonwood. With Verde Links, it's a quick and easy trip to Sedona every day. Don't forget our connectors to Camp Verde. Visit cottonwoodaz.gov for Cottonwood Area Transit and take a seat. Let's go ride.
There are people who struggle with addiction and homelessness. Sometimes it may feel like there is nothing we can do to help.
But there is. You can make a tax-deductible donation and help those in need transition away from homelessness.
When you give someone a handout, you could actually be supporting an addiction.
A better life starts with better health, especially for those living in the streets.
Support solutions, not addictions. You can make a difference. Visit cottonwoodcares.com.
Welcome back to Inside Cottonwood. I'm your host, Doug Bartosh, and I'm here with James Bramble from ADOT, Arizona Department of Transportation, and we were talking Highway 260. And so we're looking at a completion date about this time next summer.
Correct.
And that's good news. They're on schedule. They're moving right along. I think, what was the total budget on this? About 70 million?
The construction budget is right at about 45 million.
Okay. Okay.
So I think we're about 66 million with right-of-way, utilities, and all the project development.
Good.
So
this was a hefty investment for the Verde Valley. But,
absolutely.
Project well worth it, and probably long overdue, and no fault of ADOT. Just local politics, unfortunately, got in the way. But now we got it going, and the sooner we get it done, the better. And although it's not directly involved with this project, another project that I think you've just recently completed, I haven't been down there for a while, is the roundabout on the east side of I-17. And I knew that was always a challenge, because anytime I stopped in there, for gas or Subway or something, it just seemed kind of weird. I couldn't get around, to get back on the freeway very easily.
And I think that was the problem with that whole, design of that corridor before there was nobody really knew they were supposed to get around the back way to the signal at Homestead.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of a confusing area, and you'd see people doing things they really shouldn't have been doing with those left turn lanes and going the wrong way just to get out because they didn't know any better.
Yeah.
And I think, the roundabout down there is a perfect example of what it can really do to help an area. I would say there's a good portion of the people that use that area that are completely unfamiliar with the town and the area around there. They're just stopping off of I-17.
Yeah.
So to have a good example of how that really helps the area is helpful, I think.
I mean, you just told me something I never knew. I didn't know I was supposed to go out the back and around.
And then nobody else knew that either.
I just go down to the signal and make a U-turn, which obviously creates, traffic problems as well.
It can.
Yeah. So
you're allowed to make a U-turn at any signal unless it is expressly prohibited. So
right. So it was a little bit interesting, and so glad to see that fixed. And I know that the town of Camp Verde is probably really glad it's fixed.
That was a very, very tight area to build a roundabout. It's actually an elliptical shape. It's not actually a circle, just to squeeze it in there.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of utilities in there.
Yeah. We've talked about, kind of a oval about at 10th and Main Street down in the Old Town area, because the streets are offset. And that seems like the best way to handle that challenge down there. So
yeah. One of the other challenges we've had with those is people are very nervous about going into a roundabout next to a large truck, a semi-truck.
Yeah.
And the way we've designed them, I can't vouch for the truck driver, but they are designed for the trucks to fit in there and stay in their lane. So I can't guarantee they're doing that, but they have the room to.
Well, and again, I know we've had, rollovers up on 89A between Clarkdale and Cottonwood with cement trucks, and
right.
And I think people have a tendency to blame it on the roundabout, but as usual, it's probably more driver error than it is.
From what I understand, the cement coming out of the cement plant really hasn't settled in the truck yet, and it's kind of like having liquid in your tank.
So it shifts.
Can shift.
Yeah.
That's what I've heard. I don't know if it's true or not, but it makes sense.
I've heard that of the mixers, that depending on which way the tub is turning, it can draw that cement up on the side.
I think even the dry stuff kind of has fluid-like properties before it settles down when they load them.
That's probably true. So
a little speed might be a factor too.
Yeah, and you may not want to be on that side of the truck going through the roundabout. But anyway, the other thing that always comes up, particularly among the public officials in the area, is the concern about I-17, and anytime there's an accident, particularly if it's serious, which generally it is, because it's a high-speed highway, is the road gets shut down. And if you're trying to get home, either going down to Phoenix or coming back up, and particularly from this area's standpoint, and I'm sure Flagstaff, the concern is particularly on the weekends when we rely a lot on tourist tourists coming up this way and spending their dollars. And so any discussion about I-17 and
it's very much on our radar. We're well aware of, you know, its limits. It's a very it's needed work for a long time.
Yeah.
Problem is money, of course.
Sure.
It's expensive. The problem areas such as Black Canyon Hill are some of the most expensive terrain to try to build something in. And but there is stuff on the radar right now. The Maricopa Association of Governments has committed to contribute money starting at Anthem and working their way north up to Sunset Point and Cordes Junction to get, that's really the stretch that needs the most attention right now. Yeah. And I believe it's in, maybe 2021, there's some money earmarked for design. Don't quote me on that. It's coming up, though, to start at Anthem and look at adding the HOV lanes at least to Black Canyon City and then further on up the hill.
Yeah.
We have a concept with a reversible lane that we've looked at to where you might be able to open an extra couple of lanes to traffic on Friday that are heading north and then switch it around and allow it to be open for the traffic heading south on Sunday to alleviate some of that congestion. It would also be available to use if you had an accident on one of those directions at any time. You could shift traffic over there so it doesn't turn into a parking lot like we see fairly regularly.
Right. Yeah, that's certainly a concern, and again, it is a topic of discussion up here. One of the other discussions I've heard is obviously I know Sedona is trying to figure out what their traffic solutions are on 179, and that some of the thought is that 260 may become the relief valve for some of the crowding on 179. Any plans on that in terms of signage?
I can't speak with 100% certainty, but I have heard some discussion, mostly from folks around here, about the intent to sign 260 as the route to get to Sedona. Typically, from a traffic engineering standpoint, we don't do that because we sign the most direct route,
right, which
would be 179. But in the event that becomes really more of a secondary route, anything's possible.
I guess you could sign them both. And
you could, and that leads us into other areas of problems like I've seen in the news here, where the intersection of 89A with 260 then becomes, you start sending everybody going to Sedona down there, then we're looking at more work here.
Well, and I know just recently we were asked by Representative O'Halloran to begin to put together a priority list for the Verde Valley of projects, and I know that was the one that seemed to get the most attention was, what do we do at that intersection to make it a little more user-friendly.
And I've seen other concepts from years past of trying to almost bypass around that intersection. Every option crosses the Verde, which is, environmentally a difficult task to get across that. Not impossible, but takes a lot more planning and making sure we're not adversely impacting the river.
Well, and I know FER's been talked about, extending FER out to 89A, so somebody who is going to Sedona, can take that route and not through the intersection. But it really seems like the major problem is people going northbound on 89A from 260 or going southbound in the afternoon. We get a pretty good backup there.
Sure.
But so it'll be interesting to see what solutions they come up with that. And I know we've got the chamber just recently moved, and they're selling that parcel of land, and how that plays into this as well.
Yeah, we would have liked that parcel a few years ago to put in an extra right turn lane there that's needed as well.
Well, I don't think it's on the market anymore.
Oh, so. All right.
But anyway, well, thanks for coming and joining us today, James. It's been very informative, and we'll look for more progress on Highway 260, and again ask our residents to please slow down and protect our workers down there. So come back again and join us on Inside Cottonwood.